Today we're going to start with this and end up with this. So I wanted to do a fast and furious photo manipulation, and I'm using a TBLeague body 1/6 scale and a 1/25 scale typical plastic model of a GTO 1967 that I built and painted. And this is one of the advantages of using models like this is obviously Vin Diesel is not going to come and pose for me. So this is really the next best thing where I can use the TBLeague posable body, can put it into the pose that I like for my particular photo manipulation. I can find a head sculpt that's going to fit with the overall look and feel that I'm after. And in this case, because it's a Fast and Furious, the Vin Diesel head sculpt is the perfect choice for this. So let's go ahead and get started. So I've created a new document that is approximately 7,500 pixels wide and 51 inches tall. I'm going to start by bringing on a sky layer. And I'm going to size it to be about the same size as the original image. And I just picked a sky that was dramatic and had a lot of energy so that it would add that to the overall effect of our photo manipulation. The next step is to bringing in a background of our dock. And for this manipulation, if you find something that has just a pretty good view of the sky and a lot of tarmac or asphalt, that's going to work really well for this photo manipulation. Now with this, I've already extracted the original sky out of this dock image, and you can see some artifacts because the original sky was a pretty vibrant blue. And I extracted that sky by going to Select Sky. Photoshop then selected the sky. As soon as that selection was made, I clicked Delete to delete all of the sky pixels. But it did leave some of these artifacts along the edges. So I can minimize those by using layer style. So I'm going to double click on our layer, bring up the layer style box. I'm going to select inner shadow, and I'm going to click in this area to bring up the properties. And then what I want to do is add a black inner shadow. I want to use a blend mode of multiply. Have a 0-degree angle, opacity set to 100. And you can see how that gets rid of most of that blue cast that was added from extracting the sky. And it also kind of darkens the image slightly to lean towards that look where we're going for kind of a late evening effect. So I'm going to hit OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a glow layer. And this is to kind of just simulate that down here on the horizon, just before it completely goes down, the sun is just peeking through and sending a bunch of light rays down here along the asphalt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the new layer icon. I'm going to go over to my brush, make sure I have my brush selected. I'm going to go up to the brush settings, make sure I'm at 0% hardness, and I'm going to select kind of an orangish brush that's kind of a little bit on the darker side, something about like that. Hit OK. I'm going to set my brush size to about 25. And I'm using my left and right bracket keys to adjust the size of the brush up and down. And then once I've got that size adjusted, I'm just going to click once and just add a dot that you probably can't even see. But I've clicked and I've added one dot. I'm going to hit Control T. I'm going to grab the corners and I'm going to ratchet it up in size fairly dramatically. Hit OK. And then I'm going to change the blending to linear dodge. So you can kind of see that start to already add that glow effect. We're going to enhance it by adding another layer. So again, I'll come down here, click on the Add New Layer, go to Layer Colors, pick a more vibrant color, do the same thing. I'm just going to click once, I'm going to hit Control T, and I'm going to bring this up in size to be not quite as big as the first layer. And again, set it to linear dodge. So here's the effect it now adds to our glow effect. Now we're going to do that one more time. So I'm going to again click on the Add Layer button. I'm going to come over to the color picker and I'm going to pick a pretty vibrant color here. So I'm going to get something about like that range. Again, click and paint one dot, hit Control T, and scale that up to something about like that, and hit linear dodge. Okay, so now I'm going to group all of these together. So I'm going to click on the top layer, which is selected. Then I'm going to hit Shift click, and that will copy all three layers. Then I'm going to hit Control G and turn those into a group, and I'm going to call that group Glow. And this will allow us to be able to resize and position that glow as needed. So I'm actually going to resize that now. So I'm going to click Control T on our group, and I'm going to increase its size fairly dramatically, something around those lines, and I may just adjust that later as well. Our next step that we're going to do is to now add our car. So again, this is a 1/25th scale model of a 1967 GT that I put together and painted. And we're going to position it right about something like that here. Now with it in place, I'm going to go back to my glow layer. I'm going to hit Control T and just adjust where that light is hitting. I kind of like having it so it's kind of having a lot of light kind of flood underneath that car and just giving that kind of nice dramatic effect to the car. So we know we have that sunlight coming in and striking the car. So what we're going to do to enhance that effect is to go to Inner Shadow. So I double clicked on the layer. We're bringing up our layer styles. I'm going to go to Inner Shadow, and I'm going to make it look like there's a rim light from where that sun is hitting the edge of the car. So I'm going to go to our color picker. I'm going to pick something that's similar to the colors we used in our glow. Something about like that. I'm going to set the blend mode to linear dodge. And then the distance, set it to currently, and I think that's about right. And our size right around 30, 35 looks really good. So that now gives us that nice glow for where that sunlight is hitting the edge of the car. Hit OK. Now we're going to add some headlights to the car. So I'm going to do something similar to what we did before with the glow layer. I'm going to add a new layer, call it lights. Call it light here. And then I'm just going to pick a little bit darker color than this, somewhere around like that. I'm going to use my bracket keys to resize my brush to about the same size as the lens. Going to click on that. And then I'm going to do this to linear burn and increase the size. And then I'm going to duplicate that. Bring that down to our next light. Same thing, I'm going to duplicate that layer again. Bring that over here to the next light. Duplicate that layer yet again. Control T. Bring that over to our fourth light. And then I'm going to group all of these together. So I'm clicking, hitting Shift, click. Then I'm going to hit Control G and call this lights. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy those again to increase the brightness of the headlights. And I'm going to reduce that top set of lights by about 50%, just to kind of make that a little more dramatic. Let's go down even a little more. Something about like that. So that's our car added. So the next step is to add our model. So again, this is a TBLeague 1/6 scale model. Let's position him about there, looks good. And the advantage again of using these TBLeague posable models is I can pose them, in any position I want. I can find a really good head sculpt that fits the image. And in this case, because I'm doing the Fast and Furious manipulation, obviously Vin Diesel is a really good choice for that. And then also using the scale model that I built of this car allows me to put it in any angle I want to put it into or position. So a lot of advantages to using your own models in photo manipulation. So I bought these boots off of eBay, and I got this Tommy gun off of eBay as well. The sunglasses I got off of eBay as well. But one thing you're going to find is that a lot of times it's hard to find 1/6 scale clothing that is the look that you want. And for these more muscular TBLeague bodies, a lot of the 1/6 scale clothes do not fit. And so part of what I'm going to do with this series is show you how to use Photoshop to basically create your own clothes. And we're going to do that with this model. But before I do that, I want to add some contrast and detail to our model. And I'm going to do that using the knit collection. Now I have a tutorial set up that you can watch if you don't have the knit collection that will give you basically the same look and feel that using the knit collection does. So I'm going to go up to Filter, Knit Collection, and before I do that, set the model, if it isn't already, to convert to smart filter. So turn it into a smart filter before you do this next step. So I've got it set to a smart filter. I'm going to go up to Filter. I'm going to select Color Effects Pro. I'm going to pick the recipes, which was already selected. And then the first filter I'm going to apply is a clarity bump. And that just adds some detail, a little bit of contrast to our model. Click OK. And then I'm going to add another one by going up to Filter, Knit Collection, Color Effects Pro. And this one I'm going to add a lot of detail. So I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom and select this Fur Detail filter. And you can see before and after the dramatic effect that it makes on the model. Now I'm going to hit OK. And the next step I'm going to do is to add clothes to our model. And I'm going to do that by using a black and white adjustment layer. But I need a mask for that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a mask of our model layer by going up, make sure our model layer is selected, go up to Select, Subject, and Photoshop has done a selection of that. Then I'm going to go up to Select, Select and Mask, and from the drop down here, I'm going to have it create a new layer mask. Okay. Then I'm going to add a black and white adjustment layer. I'm going to click on the model mask. I'm going to select Alt and then drag it up onto the black and white layer, so that black and white layer is only affecting our model. And then I'm going to bring up the properties and I'm going to reduce the reds and the yellows to get to kind of that black color I'm after. And in later videos, I'm going to show how to kind of reduce some of the definition on the body to maybe make it look a little more clothes-like. But for this particular manipulation, because it's going to end up dark, we actually want to have this much contrast and detail showing at this point, because we're going to hide a lot of it with some of the future layers that we're going to add. So now I'm going to click on my mask and I'm going to hit X to change the foreground color to white. And then I'm just going to use my bracket keys to adjust the size of my image. Make sure that's hard. Going to remove clothes off of his arms. Take the filter off of the boots. zoom in a bit just to see if we got this. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So there's our clothes added. And now I'm going to drag a belt onto him. And this is just a photograph I took of one of my belts. And just drag that on to further that effect. So we're just trying to sell the fake here to give that a look that is more like pants and shirt separated by a belt. Now what I want to do is I'm going to actually group our model layer and our car layer. So I'm going to select belt, I'm going to hit shift and come down to the car. Now I'm going to hit Control G to group all those together, and I'm going to call this car and model. So the next thing we're going to do, and let me zoom out a bit, is add a gradient map to create kind of more of that cinematic look that I'm after. So I'm going to go to Adjustments here. I'm going to go to Gradient Map. Click here, which is going to bring up our dialog box for a gradient map editor. I'm going to click on the tab here. And the first color I'm going to set this to is sort of a teal, which is 164458. Hit OK. Come over to this tab, double click it. I'm going to set this kind of to a yellow-orange color, so that's EAA94D. And so you can kind of see that effect that this is going to add. I'm going to put this into linear light and then reduce it to 30%. And the car and model here is brighter than I want from the background. So I'm going to click the car layer here. I'm going to come to our adjustments. I'm going to add a clears layer. And I only want this to affect our car and model. So I'm going to add a clipping mask by pushing the Alt key. And then that'll bring up this icon right here and do a click. And it'll make it so now this adjustment will only affect what's in the folder. And I'm going to darken this up a fair amount. And this is why we kind of wanted to leave his clothes a little more darker, just so we can see some of that detail when we do this darkening layer. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to actually add another adjustment layer, which is a hue and saturation. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit Alt, make it a clipping mask, and I'm just going to drop the saturation on him and the car to right around 30 or so. Now let's go ahead and add a shadow to our car and model. So I'm going to go on the glow layer here. I'm going to click the Add Layer button. I'm going to name this Shadow. I'm going to make sure I have my brush selected. Make sure it is soft. And I just want to size my brush about the size of the wheels. And this kind of show us the angle already that the sun is casting a shadow, and we can use that as a reference. So I'm going to click here. Oh, I need to select black. I'm going to click on this wheel, and then I'm going to select Shift and click. First off, I'm going to actually reduce the opacity on this down to around 40. Do the same thing with the flow around 40. I'm going to click the shift, click, hit the shift. Come here, do the same thing here, click, shift, click, click, shift, click. Next one, click, shift, click. The last one, shift, shift, click. I want to do, I think, this one again, shift, click. I'm going to do that again, brush, shift, click, shift, click, click. That looks pretty good. Let's just do this one more time as well. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with our model. Reduce this to about the size of his foot. I'm going to go click, shift, click, shift, click, shift, click, shift. Something about like that. Now I'm going to add a new layer so I can add like a contact shadow. So I'm going to increase the opacity up to, I don't know, about 60. I'm going to reduce the size of our brush. And then I'm just going to paint just along the edges here that are touching the asphalt, just to add that kind of contact shadow. And do that with his shoes and the cars here. I'm going to hit E for erase and erase part of that. Hit B to bring our brush back. Kind of paint that back. Okay, I'm gonna have that selected. I'm gonna rename this contact shadow. That's selected. I'm going to hit shift click, control G, call that shadow. And you can see the effect that we're getting from adding that shadowing. Now, one thing I'm noticing is I'd like that glow effect to be more dramatic. And I think I made a mistake and had the brushes set to a lower opacity when I created it. So in order to fix that mistake, I'm going to go ahead and just double the glow layer, put it into a folder with both of them. And then I'm going to reposition that. Kind of, I may go a bit bigger too now. just to kind of shine up underneath that car. Kind of like that drama that it adds. So our next step is we're going to add another gradient map to just again give us a look and feel that we're after. So I'm going to go to adjustments. I'm going to go up to gradient map, click on that, and I'm going to select one of the existing ones, which I'm pretty sure is this one, but I want to reverse it. Again, I want to set this to linear light, and I want to adjust this down to about 20% or so. And so that's the overall effect I'm getting with that. And I know different Photoshop versions have different pre-created gradient maps, but feel free to just play around with the gradient maps and come up with the color that you like in particular. And this is a kind of a look and feel that I particularly like. So we're basically done. I'm going to now just crop our image. So make sure everything fits. And then I'm going to do just one last adjustment to the overall look of the image. So at this point, it's basically done. And at this point is where I like to kind of experiment and play around with colors and effects and the look. And I don't really care if beyond this point is necessarily where I can do it non-destructively. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the knit collection and look at how some of those filters may affect the look and feel of the overall photo manipulation. And I would feel free to use the camera raw filter, use some of the blending modes in that, and some of your adjustment layers like hue and saturation and the color balance, just to add some tonality that is something that you particularly like. So I'm actually going to create a stamp, and a stamp is a layer that copies all the existing layers and creates one layer from all the existing layers. And so that is a pretty lengthy shortcut. It's Control, Shift, Alt, and E. That's Control, Shift, Alt, and E. I'm going to make that a... No, actually, I'm not going to make that a smart object yet. I'm going to go to Filter. And the reason I'm doing that is if I don't set it to a smart object, the knit collection will create a layer with each effect. And there's some advantages to that. And one is that you can set the opacity of the effect. So if the effect is more than you want, then you can just lower it by adjusting the capacity. And I kind of have a feel for some of these that work well with this particular coloring and tone. Clarity bump. I think what is going to look really good, if I can find it, is this fall. And yeah, I think that looks really good. So see how that fall, it brings out that color in particular. Yeah, I really, really like the way that looks. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And that basically finishes up this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that I've showed you some techniques that you may be able to use in your photo manipulations. And I'll hope you will continue to watch some of the other photo manipulation tutorials that I have created.